Look, man, it's good to be back. I appreciate you hosting this thing, what it feels like for the last 6 weeks. So thank you.
Where's my pay?
Well, you getting paid just as much as I am. So I have shared 100% of every fee that I get on this deal. So, but I do appreciate it between COVID and campaigning and but being the stalwart that you are and carrying on the mission. I do appreciate it.
You're welcome. It's been my pleasure. My pleasure.
So I almost feel like a guest here. So I want to just follow your lead and see where it takes us.
All right. No, I think you can jump back in really quickly.
Well, I think the thing that was most notable to me on Monday, and this sounds crazy, but we only had 2 folks from the public to petition to speak. And I thought both of them brought up, I thought what I would call real issues, not just issues, just drum beats, if you will.
Right.
And I was surprised at that. I'm certainly not, wanting another 15, but
Sure.
but I felt like that was very productive, everything that was said, and I thought that it was well done. I'm still not sure about the last gentleman who came up and spoke, really what the issues are relative to the water, but I am confident that Peter Varney will resolve whatever it is to the extent that the city needs to. So, but anyway, that just kind of stood out for me because typically for folks who are watching, we get between 13 and 18
Right.
is generally the number. So anyway, and I went today for press conference for the Viking Classic, which,
Right.
by the way, you need to go to. I did it last year, did a tailgate. It was incredibly fun. I mean, I really had a ball. But everybody was saying, "Hey, man, you did a great job. We got out so quick." And I said, "Oh, no. A lot of variables in play. And I thought we had a good, robust discussion.
Right.
I thought it was as long as it needed to be, really."
Right. No, and it's great the Viking Classic's coming back. That adds a lot to the community. It highlights the community. It adds to the tax base. I mean, sales tax and the hotel use, and it's great.
Absolutely. The other thing folks don't really understand about that is there are all these groups, fraternities who are coming into town, alumni, and they're doing these fundraisers for scholarships for local kids. There's
Right.
a little golf tournament that goes along with this. There's a number of events, side events going along the Classic, not just the Classic itself. Right. And we'll have 10,000 people at the stadium. So if we don't fill up all the hotel rooms, we do, we'll fill up a lot of them. And here's another thing that I don't think many people really fully appreciate, but the Nash County Tourism Board, of which Rocky Mount's part of,
Right.
does a lot to sponsor that thing. So, we think of this as just a Elizabeth City State University thing, but it's a Rocky Mount, it's a Nash County thing, and it really has a tremendous impact. And I got to tell you, I just find it's fun. I mean, I just
Right.
enjoy it. And, to be able to go to a football game and not have to travel to Raleigh or Chapel Hill or Greenville, and I think it's just great. And the other thing I think we ought to notice is that Chris Miller, it was her last full council meeting
Right.
this past week. So, kudos to 20 plus years of service. I mean, I cannot at this point imagine what 20 years on council would look like, but I'm really appreciative for doing it. That's a lot of sacrifice. I don't think people really realize it.
Yeah, it's a lot of time, and if you take out the number of meetings she's done throughout the years, I mean, it's at least 24 meetings a year. So you do the math, it's about 480 meetings that she's attended. Just those alone,
I know,
is amazing. So, and WB did the same.
That's
and,
right.
And others have as well. So, and Mayor, how long was Mayor Turnage?
You know what? I thought the mayor was an appointed position as a child. I didn't know that it was an elected position. I mean, he's just been there for so long. I want to say 40, but I think it was probably 32 years or 36 or something short of 40. But I really thought.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even remember anybody voting. I don't remember him having an opponent.
Yeah.
Maybe he did once.
No, he did a couple of times, but true public service
Absolutely.
from many people, and that's what it takes to make a community thrive. Because it takes, it takes talents from multiple people and insight, and it has robust conversation, and that it just adds to everything. So it's awesome.
Well, I want to say we had a consent agenda, so we just blip over that a little bit. But I think it's important to point out that we had Police Corporal Christopher Wichard, who had 16 years of service that we awarded the sidearm to and his badge, as well as Police Corporal Wade Butler, who'd been with us for 15 and a half years, also awarded the duty badge and purchase of his sidearm. So, we don't often talk about it. I feel remiss in not saying that at the meeting, but it was part of the consent agenda. I really do appreciate everything that those those folks are doing for us. So the police are doing a fine job.
Yeah, they are all, everyone down at the city does a good job, and certainly the police. And, I admire anybody that can be a police officer or a firefighter. It's something I don't think I personally could do. And it takes a special person because you're putting your life on the line. And
Right.
I just very appreciative of it. And I think most people are as well. So.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. So let's talk a little bit about leases. That came up in the public comment, right?
Right.
We renewed a bunch of them.
Certainly.
We made some leases, and so the general observation that was made was that, hey, look, we seem as the city to lease property pretty cheaply.
Correct.
And we do, as a city, tend to lease property that we need at a much higher rate. Call it a market rate. And so, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, let's talk about it.
Well, I brought up the concerns about the leases in
Yeah.
the past. In fact, when I was first brought it back in 2019, probably 2020, I requested some information. The entire city council and you received a spreadsheet, I think, of all our leases.
Right.
And just to look at, what we were charging folks. And I would agree. We are stewards of the taxpayers' money, and in some cases, we're there to help out businesses, especially minority and women-owned businesses to get started. And that's what Douglas Block, I think, was established for, is to help. So I can understand there, but throughout the city, I think we need to take a hard look at that and have a robust conversation. And, it might be in the beginning you have a lower rent to help someone get started.
Sure.
Because it takes a lot to start a business.
Sure.
I admire anyone that can start a business. So as time goes, possibly adjust the lease to where it's more in line with the market, because we as the taxpayers are subsidizing those businesses. And truly, to be fair to all the citizens and all the other businesses, I think it's worthy of discussion.
Sure. Well, I'm just going to play a little bit of the devil's advocate, just because my observation is that we have a lot of space that's just not being leased. Mm-hmm. And I'll take the position that I'd rather have somebody paying me something than having just an empty building. So, I mean, it begs the next question. Well, if that's the case, who's supposed to be our agent on this? I mean, we have some outside contractors. Do we need to have somebody internally maybe trying to push the real estate? Because frankly, I don't know that you would know it was even on the market.
Right.
If you just rolled into town. I mean, we've got a lot of space at the train station that's available, which is cool stuff, by the way.
But I think we do have a broker that handles the commercial space and another one that handles some of the residential. Mayor, I would counter you and say, maybe we ought to sell some of the property and get it on the tax roll.
Oh, well, look, okay, that's just a cheap shot. You know damn well that I'm going to go down that road. Absolutely. I mean, to the extent that I don't think the city needs to own anything, really. We do serve the role in some cases of preventing decay in the case of downtown and trying to redevelop it. I mean, I certainly understand that role, but we don't need to maintain it forever. I mean, it would be much better privately held, I believe, to put it on the tax basis. That becomes the easiest of all, right? Right,
because we'd also would not have to do the maintenance, and the maintenance is a big piece because we're not even recouping our cost on the maintenance. So I think we need to have this conversation, and I think it's worthy of doing so. Maybe Mayor Pro Tem Walker will stick it on the committee of the whole so we can discuss it.
Well, maybe we have a show just talking about how about back taxes that are owed to us, maintenances that are owed to us. Would it make sense to do some foreclosures, just really kind of explore that? I mean, that's something I know that we've all asked for. Right. And time never seems to be allocated to it. And that's not a dig, because time is really, I mean, we cover a lot of ground, and requires a lot of thought and a lot of time. So I don't know, maybe that's where we are. Maybe we just need to spend some time on it.
Yeah, and I think we should. And I go back to when you and I were first elected, and you scheduled a trip, and several people, including myself, went to Mobile, Alabama. And I appreciate that. Many people don't know that you did that. But I think it's worthy of discussion because we brought home a lot of ideas. Right. And I don't think we've discussed those, and I think we could include those in the conversation.
I agree. And I have brought it up some. I mean, look, just little things. I mean, the one that really stuck out for me on that trip is that code inspectors were assigned typically a police officer.
Mm-hmm.
And that seems a little crazy. But if you consider that a code enforcement officer can't just require somebody to let them in the house, but a police officer can if there's for cause or probability to do so. And many times that infraction became a criminal offense, and many times it really did help de-escalate crime and really rid those areas with some challenging, call them neighbors.
Right.
So small things like that were impactful. And I really saw that those guys were doing. I thought I was pretty impressed with it.
Right.
But it comes down to a coordinated plan, and that's really what we need to be spending our time on, in my estimation.
No, I agree.
So other than that, I mean, what else stood out to you? I mean, we went through a number of things, traffic engineer, a few policy changes, closing of an alley at Ebenezer Baptist Church, but nothing really jumped out at me. It had a whole lot of conversation until we got to some of the lease conversations, and even that didn't take a whole lot of time.
No, I think worthy of several people who are interested, especially live in the Wood Green area. We did approve the reduction of speed from 35 miles per hour down to 25 miles per hour. There's a lot of my dad lives near that right on the outskirts of that neighborhood, and there's a lot of pedestrian traffic through there and a lot of children. So I think that was worthy, and I know the neighborhood is requested that with petition. So we did do that. So I think that's worthy of mentioning as well.
It is, and I think the only thing that really drew a lot of conversation was actually item number 18, but I think it could have probably fallen into 3 or 4 different categories that we talked about. But really, I think the point was this. I'd just like to see where we're spending dollars, and like to see a report on the impact, and I'd like to have a measurable goal. Was one position, and then the other position was essentially, well, look, I believe this is really a black-white, racial and economic issue, and that I believe that we need to be, as a city, leveling the scales by putting our thumb on it. And so that was maybe an oversimplification of the two positions, but that was really my take home on that. And of course, what prevailed was what was recommended. So, any thoughts on that other than what you talked about?
Yeah, but I think, Mayor, most of my concern is about the procedure.
Right.
When we go into these housing grants, that we have a 3-person committee that's comprised of Mayor Pro Tem Walker, Councilman Joyner, and Councilman Knight. My concern is we have no written I won't say rules, but application. Mm-hmm. So we don't know what, so if you brought something to the table and I did.
And you're asking for something like an RFP.
What's the criteria? What's the criteria?
Sure.
Basic criteria. It doesn't have to be in depth, but we need to have some sort of criteria. We just recently voted on the committee. Right. And then the other is there's no committee notes. We need to do everything transparently, and Councilman Harris also, I think he and I share the same thought that we just need to know the procedure, right? Not just us, but the public, right? And I will go back. I adamantly disagree about the race issue. Sure, it has everything to do with procedure, and I will go back to talk about Rocky Mount. I represent a majority-minority ward. Right. So, and of the 7 wards, there's only one majority non-minority ward. So everything that's done in Rocky Mount, I find it difficult to say it's to help a certain race or the other. Now, historically, could you make that claim? I think you could. But I think in today's world, it would be difficult to do. It is being made, and I think I just disagree with it.
Sure. Well, maybe as the absolute criterion, but certainly it could be one of the components that could be looked at going forward. But that's just the point. We don't have a scale in which we're gauging things by.
Yeah, but what I'm talking about is the argument was I was against because of race.
No. I think you made that abundantly clear last night. You made it abundantly clear here. I know that to be true, having known you for most of all my life, and so yeah. I mean, I don't think there's any
Right.
argument about that. But the point is, what is the scale? I mean, how do we grade it?
Right.
I mean, and maybe that's a criterion that's part of it. But if we all know it, then we all know it, and then we're able to make different decisions or better decisions.
And people can also make a decision whether they want to apply for the grant or not.
That's right. That's right.
So that we had robust conversation about that, and then I guess you probably want to talk about the Dred Wimberly.
Well, I mean, we did talk about that. I don't really. To me, I don't think there was a whole lot of conversation on that particular matter.
No, that's just the importance of the history. But
yeah,
I do want to bring up the last.
I do like the history and wish the House had. Well, no, I mean it is kind of a cool thing, but I wish the House had been left a little bit more intact. As I understand it, it's been gutted, so it's going to be a little bit of a challenge. But and I think initially that was going to be the Unity Cemetery, kind of. Headquarters, if you will, but we ended up with a better location on that, so I can't really get so upset on that. But anyway,
sure.
But the consideration of filing bids, finally getting the Denton Street pool fixed. I mean, that's been a sore subject for a while, and all the chemicals and compounds that I haven't read or thought about since I was in high school or college or both. Boy, I was a little bit like reading the Old Testament.
Well, it was for those of us that were listening to you have to read all the compounds. It was humorous.
And some people say, look, man, you don't have to read all that stuff. Just go to item 19. But I think it's important that folks who are watching understand what it is that we are voting on, because I don't think everybody pulls the agenda. You only have a couple of days before the meeting to do it anyway. So you have to have a high degree of interest to do it, to look at it, to then go to the meeting.
Right.
So I think it's just important for everybody to understand what the vote is, and so I do take that a little bit extra time, and it was very challenging. No question about it.
But one thing on those chemicals is it's a necessity for our water system, and I think one thing that I know you have a meeting with Peter every once in a while. I would be curious to know, or how difficult with the supply chain is it to get these? I hope they're readily available, and I assume they are, but.
I don't know about these in particular. I know that when I was running the campaign for Congress and talking with farmers, just fertilizer and phosphates and everything else, I mean, it was a major issue.
Sure.
In fact, most of them had already resigned themselves. They weren't going to have an adequate amount for this year. So they felt like that was going to be okay, but couldn't go 2 years or 3 years. And that became the concern in their mind.
Right.
So anyway, I think we've kind of gone through the meeting. One of the things I'd like to hear you talk about, if you're prepared to do so, is well, you've been put on the NCMPA board, right? And so, and I'm tickled to death that you're our representative there, and you've been to a couple of meetings. Give us a little bit of what the NCMPA does, and kind of some of the issues there that you feel like you can share with, and how impactful that is to the city. Sure.
Well, I mean, it's it comprises of half our budget of our revenue, so it's extremely important. And I'm still in the learning process.
Sure.
I spoke to T.J. Walker the other day and said, "Look, T.J., I'm still learning. So give me a couple more meetings before I can really respond." But we go through. It's really from the whole NCMPA, which is basically from, I would say, Raleigh East, the communities that are involved in that, and all the communities come together, and we have a meeting in Wilson, and it's quarterly, and we just met, I believe, 2 weeks ago. But you look at the rates, and you also look at, because we buy the power now from Duke, and then you look at, a lot is the one thing I've discovered is we always talk about peak shaving, and like with your unit at your home and my home, you have the device on there where the city can go through and during the peak hours can cut the electricity off. But that really what that does for the remainder for everyone is we're based off the highest electric usage, and I'm probably not giving you an accurate explanation of it, but our rates are based off the highest peak during the month, and it can be excessive, and so we need to cut that to keep it as low as possible. So really this time of year from April on is when we really try to cut, our peak. So we talk about that, and they give reports on that, and then they talk about the health. This last time there was an opening on the Electricities Board from a representative of
and so Kempa actually then decides who the Electricities Board will be that then dictates really our utility costs.
Right, which is, so we were a person from the city manager from Wake Forest was elected to represent the Nkempa board, and it's multiple people on the Electricities Board. And so, right now I'm just starting to meet some folks, and again, it's overwhelming. And then there is actually coming up, I believe in 2 weeks, there will be a conference, and it's in the western part of the state in Cherokee. And I will be attending, and I think some other city council folks may be attending and going to that. So, so to be honest with you, Mayor, I'm still learning.
Yeah.
And I won't say it's overwhelming, but there's a lot of acronyms to learn. A lot.
I can fully appreciate that. I really can, and I appreciate you doing the yeoman's work of doing that because it is important. You told me something here I didn't fully understand, didn't really appreciate. I've heard it like all of my adult life. We talk about peak rates. Setting basically what our costs are going to be. I've always heard, avoid the peak. I just figured that was a capacity issue. It made sense that we would try to reduce during peak times. But I never really thought about that in terms of direct impact and cost to me as a consumer. And so now all of a sudden it starts to make sense why we have generator programs where, we'll buy generators and offset during peak hours and generate power and on and on and on. So that makes a lot more sense than it used to me.
Yeah. Well, and it also indirectly capacity, because part of the peak shaving is especially when you got the industry. The industry, you look at the rolling blackouts in California and Texas and so forth. We've fortunately not have had that happen to us, and that's one thing we're trying to avoid. And I don't think we're close to that.
Right.
But again, I'm still learning.
That's right. You're not certifying or guaranteeing anything yet. This is not
no.
The other thing that I learned last night, or at least that Pete spoke to in his brief, was the yard, the bulk waste collection, where we are. It looks like we're catching up to that. It looks like we're catching up to our trash challenge. It looks like we have more trucks coming into play. And I know that everybody will be personally grateful for that. I know I will be. It feels like I generate or don't generate. I receive at least one complaint a day, sometimes two a day. And it's something I'm absolutely powerless to do anything about until you have the equipment, until you have the personnel in place. It's just we're all going to have to be patient.
Right.
And I get a lot of this, hey, look, I'm paying for this in my tax rate, and I feel you, and I am too. But I can't make a truck appear out of nowhere. And even though one's been ordered, doesn't mean that it's in place to service today. So there are some capacity and bandwidth issues that we're just going to have to be patient with. But per our city manager, it felt like we are on the road to recovery. And so I was excited to see that. And I'm sure you were too. I'm sure you get the same number of complaints.
I did even right before I came here. I had one. But we are. Speaking to that, we are going to contract that out, and it is going to cost
a lot of money.
The contract award amount was $90,000.
Yeah.
So it's costing us a lot of money, and so.
Well, now I will say that Peter had mentioned that to me in one of our meetings. And he got that number down from a much, much, much larger number. And I don't feel comfortable sharing that, but it was a much, much larger number. So we are looking and trying to reduce costs. We're not just spending just for the sake of spending to get it done. And very proud of our administration for working on that kind of stuff. Sure. And the other thing I think is important to note is that our senior center is being opened up for a cooling location. So as we go through this really aggressive heat wave, if you're older, if you don't have air conditioning in your house, go to the senior center. I mean, don't put your health at risk. Right. And that's something I don't think we had, or maybe we hadn't advertised up to this point in time, but I think it's something that everybody needs to be aware of.
Right.
And other than that, I think that covers the ground, unless you remember something a little different than me or something stands out for you.
No,
I think on balance, it was a good meeting. I think we got a lot done. We did have a rather lengthy closed session conversation, but that was really more for information than it was for anything else. Nothing really actionable there. So anyway, until in 2 weeks, I'll see you again.
Yes, sir.